this week, this unit, the entire week, we are going to be talking about consumers and there's four types of consumers that every business deals with. I don't care what size you are, small, medium, large, whatever. But we are specifically going to focus on small home and solopreneur businesses and the consumers that we get. Now, the reason that consumers are really important for us, as a small home or solo business, is we can't afford any customer to leave, right? Like, we just can't. Now, sometimes that makes it sound like we're in a desperate situation, and in some cases it can be. But there's a couple of reasons for that. One, financially, yes. If we lost a medium or a regular consumer, a consistent consumer, that could hurt us financially. It could, give us some challenges financially. The reason we don't want to lose a consumer is that we are, at our core, we are about building deep personal relationships with our consumers. We really relish that bond, that deep connected feeling that we have with our consumers, and we lose one, we take it very personally. We feel like we failed them. We feel like that we haven't lived up to what they wanted from us. We can feel a little less than. And it may not be any of that. Maybe it was something like they had to close down, whatever. But there's two reasons that we can kind of sometimes we don't want to lose a consumer. Now, when I talk to consumers, and again, you hear me say this all the time, it's something that I say a lot, because I hear it a lot. And you can't sell to everyone, all right? So we need to get everyone off of the table. That's just not possible. And there's a whole video on everyone and why you can't sell to them and why you shouldn't sell to them, as well as about the consumer funnel, and how that doesn't work for small businesses and home businesses and solo businesses. But briefly, I'm trying to figure out how much I want to talk about this. I don't want to always sound like a broken record. There's just too much. You can't, as a small home or solopreneur business, market and sell to everyone. You just can't. And when you do, you distill down your experience, your business, what you offer to such a degree to make it appealing to everyone that it's basic. It's like, if you've ever gone to some place and had, like, a good example is salsa. Like, it can sometimes be so watered down when you buy it in the grocery store, so watered down and so flavorless that you're like, is this really salsa? And it's the same thing with your messaging. You want to make sure that you don't distill your messaging down. Now, again, the caveat when I always talk about selling to everyone is we're not saying no to any business. Anybody and everybody can purchase. That's just common sense. What I'm saying is not ignoring everyone, because you need to still spend some time marketing and selling to everyone. That's never going to change. You still need to find some people in the pool that might want to, or outside the pool that might want to come in and play in the pool, is really how I should phrase it. But we want to focus less time on them. Okay, so I used to say a 60-40 split, but times they are tough and times they are changing. And I think it should be more like a 70-30. Okay, 70% of your time should be focused on your current consumers that fall into these three consumers, and 30% of your marketing and selling time to marketing and selling to everyone. And I would also add, as a caveat there, I would suggest that 30% of your time is probably, if you're going to market to everyone, maybe like once a week. That time is probably best spent on social media. But let's just be honest, because it's the quickest, the fastest, the biggest reach that you can get at the most affordable prices you can find, right? Like that's social media right there. So I'd say if you're that 30% of time should be on social media, trying to find the balance. Just seeing who else is out there, because there's plenty of core consumers, ideal consumers that are in everyone. They just don't know it yet. All right, and there are three types of consumers. Now, these three types of consumers, and again, all of this ties back to things like these three consumers are the community, the neighborhood in which your ideal consumer is one of these three, by the way. Your ideal consumer lives in this neighborhood with which we call ideal market. Okay, so within your ideal market, there are three types of consumers, one of which is your ideal consumer, and that's your super fan. All right, we're going to talk about the super fan in a second, but let's talk number one about the problem child. Okay, and if we're going to keep using this community analogy, no matter where you live, no matter who you know, no matter what, there's always going to be at least one or two people that you can tolerate, but you don't necessarily like being around, and they can drive you crazy when they're there, when you see them. Okay, that in a nutshell is your problem child. All right, I gotta stop saying all right all the time. That's the problem child. They are that person that you see on occasion, maybe once or twice a year, maybe a little more often. When you do, they drive you crazy. They're insane. They don't, because they don't understand. It's like almost like the uncle who never thinks that you grow up. Always thinks that you're still a 5-year-old kid, and you're like, I'm 45, uncle. They don't understand what you do. They don't understand how you do it. They don't understand any of that. And the problem child, again, that's where expectations play in. They have an expectation of what an experience with your business is going to be like that is so far removed from that experience that it just kind of blows all of their circuits. Okay, you all know who the problem child is. You all know who I'm sure right now you're probably thinking of at least 3 or 4 people in your business and life that could be classified as problem child. The next one is the biggest one is the casual consumer, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Now I want to jump to the polar opposite side of things, which is the super fan, your ideal consumer. Okay, that person who is ideal, right, and perfect for you. All right, and they're the people that we really want to get a lot of. All right, we want more ideal consumers. We want more people who are right for us. The super fan is that consumer who has expectations that are closest to the reality that we offer, that are really close to the reality we offer, and have behaviors and habits that we want to foster in additional and future consumers. All right. So the super fan is that ideal consumer that you have. They're the ones that we really want more of. They're the ones that we kind of want to grow and add to our base. Okay, they are the ones that have expectations that are extremely close to the reality that you offer. All right, they understand what you do, why you do it, how you do it. It's like your best friend kind of thing. Now the superfan and the problem child, and we're going to talk a lot about the superfans as we keep moving forward. The superfans and the casual consumers, which is the next group, are the main focus of everything that we do in Sell the Experience. The problem child and the superfan, I would say, are probably about 20% each right now of your consumer base. All right, and it might feel more like sometimes there might be times where you have a few more problem child and you're like, maybe I need to rethink this business. Maybe this isn't heading in the way that I wanted it to. And then there might be times where you have a little bit more super fans. But it's basically about 20% of each. In the middle of all of that, and 60% of your base is a casual consumer. All right. And the casual consumer is that consumer that shops on a semi-regular basis. You will see them more often than you will the problem child, but not as much as a super fan. You don't know as much about them as you do as about the super fan, and vice versa. Now, the casual consumer has a lot. Well, they break into 2 categories. There's a spectrum in consumers. And there is a group of casual consumers on the far end, like towards the problem child side, that probably will never convert over. They're probably never going to change their buying habits. They're going to buy from you because it's a purchase of convenience. Maybe you're on the way home from work. Maybe you have what they want in the content. Whatever the reason, they're loyal to somebody else. Now, the other portion of your casual consumer base is probably from center to super fan, is more that consumer that really has a lot of habits, behaviors, and traits that match up with the super fan that you really want to, and people who can really benefit from what you're offering. Their expectations aren't necessarily aligned yet. They're not 100% sure what you're doing. There's something that they want to hear that they're not hearing that will then convert them over to being a more regular consumer. All right. And that's the crux of everything that we are going to do in the foreseeable future is based on getting casual consumers to convert over to super fans. All right. Now, because the casual consumer has a lot of the traits and behaviors, habits, expectations, potential expectations of the super fan, we are going to talk to the casual consumer like they are a super fan. All right, we're going to treat them like they are already a super fan, and we're going to talk to them in the same way because they want to hear something that the super fan is hearing that they aren't hearing. So we need to make sure that what we're saying to them engages that super fan thinking that they want to get them to convert over. Does that make sense? So and it's not as simple as, I wish it was as simple as saying, okay, well, I say this over here. I say, you can buy this, and then over here I say you can purchase it, and they're waiting to hear buy. It's not that simple. All right, there are a number of things that kind of go, and that's where the fun of this kind of starts to come into shape. This is kind of where the fun of it. We're going to have to be a little bit of a detective. We have to start really listening to what the casual consumer is saying. Really pay attention to their habits and their behaviors and their traits, so that we can say, I can see this. I can see why they're not converting over. I'm not telling them this, and this is what they really need to hear. Let me give you a really good example, all right? And it's going to be a personal example. So many years ago, when the design office was first starting out, one of the things that I heard a lot, a lot of people would turn down design services when I know that A, they needed it, and B, that if they knew how much my services were, then they could afford it, because it was all flat rate and it was pretty affordable. And one time I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about rates, and we were talking about you really, like your business card is, and this was like 15 years ago, so business cards were really like the hot thing. Like everybody had business cards, and really funky business cards and stuff. And it was like you're basically printing these off your printer on press and peel cardstock. I can see the edges, and that doesn't look great. You're supposed to be a financial planner. I get that you're playing it off that it's, you're saving people money. But here's some of the things. And I don't remember what it was in the conversation that clued into me is he considered it a luxury item. Like design services were something that was a luxury that he could afford it, but he didn't want to afford it because he thought it was unnecessary, that he thought that it was not for him. He like, again, it just was out of his reach. It wasn't something that he really needed. And it was then that I realized, okay, this what he's not hearing is it's not a luxury, it is a necessity. And that sort of then changed my messaging and my marketing to be like, you're sending these business cards, your business card is supposed to be speaking for you, You're not always there to talk for it, so it's necessary that it becomes a really big billboard. It really kind of gets across everything that you need to get across, in a visual form, without you being able to be there to explain about it. And that's when he got it. He was like, I completely understand. And everything else I had said, I told him those things in very similar ways. But once I understood, oh, it's the luxury part that's stopping him from purchasing, that's what I need to address. That's really the concern for him on why he's not going to be using my services. All right. And then that's what you need to do. You're going to need to sit down and really listen to the casual consumer and kind of figure out what it is that's stopping them, what it is that's not getting them to convert. Now, sometimes, like with the luxury thing, because again, I do a lot of work with small businesses, and so definitely small businesses can perceive design work as, 52nd Street, Fifth Avenue. It's a big, expensive thing. I'm a small business. And sometimes it comes to, I don't deserve that. But it's very much a luxury. So you're going to have to figure out what it is. And that may hit, like when I hit upon that knocked about 15 casual consumers closer to superfan. Okay. So while you're doing your kind of detective work, once you start finding some of these things and you start finding that they work, you're going to start to notice that the more you talk about it, then you can bring more people closer. Because I guarantee you, if one person in your consumer base is thinking something, other people are. All right. And the reason I believe that is because we surround ourselves with like-minded individuals. So it only makes sense that the consumers would know people just like them, who would think the same things. They would think, oh, luxury, it's a luxury item, I can't afford it, it's out of reach, boom. Rather than, you know what, that's what I thought. Now I've got Bill the business card guy. I always use Bill, Bob, or Tom. Bill the business card guy, once I changed his mind, now I've set him on a pathway to start talking to other like-minded people like him. You know what? I thought it was a luxury too, but it turns out it's not. It's a really important and vital part of my business. Now, Bill the business card guy can go out and talk with feeling, with with credibility, because he's talking to the people who trust him. Hey, these are the things that I thought, but I don't think them anymore, and here's why. That is your powerful tool. That is how you're going to start marketing and selling less. You're going to start messaging out with your current consumers, and you're going to train them how to talk about your business. All right. And again, we want to bring that, and to do that requires expectations being set right, knowing what behaviors that we're looking to engage with, what we want in a consumer, why we want it, and then figuring out how we can get more of it. All right. And again, that's everything that we're going to be talking about in everything that we do. Now, I want you to think about in our lives. We're not just business owners. We're not just business people. We are also consumers. All right. And in your life, I know I have been at least once, maybe more. I will be honest, maybe once or twice more. I have been a problem child. There are a handful of businesses that I am incredibly loyal to. I am a super fan. I will do anything to help them out and everything I can. And then in the middle, I am mostly a casual consumer, and it's the same thing with you. Almost every one of your interactions with a business is on the casual consumer side of things. Okay. And so as we kind of get in this idea of consumers and casual consumers and behaviors and traits, we're going to talk a little bit more in the bonus material about really kind of identifying and targeting them. I'm sorry, the supplemental material, but identifying and targeting and creating like what our ideal consumer would look like visually. But I just want you to think for a few minutes, because you've all been in these situations where you have been a consumer. And that leads me to today's Blue Sky Challenge. I want you to think back to those times, and I want you, and I don't name names, don't get emotional, don't get, for the problem child specifically, don't be like, I hate them, I'm going to get them, kind of thing. I want you to think back to an experience that you had, one as a problem child, one as a casual consumer, and one as a super fan. All right. And I want you to set a timer. The timed one works best for this one. I don't think any other of the Blue Sky thinking processes would really work for this. But you can also check those out and see what works for you on the Blue Sky thinking, creative thinking video. But I want you to set a timer, because I think this one requires the timer. And I would say set it for 5 minutes. Let's say 5 minutes. Set it for 5 minutes, because that's a good amount of time to kind of rehash everything, but not too much time to go down our incorrect pathway. And so, for example, let's start with the problem child. I want you to think about a time that you went to a business, and you interacted with the business, and you were a real problem child. You got to own it. We've all been there at least once. We've all been a problem child. I want you to write about what happened, why you think it happened, what was the expectation that you had, what was the reality that you were face to face with. Did the business correct it? Because if they probably didn't, and you're probably still a problem child. Everything that happened, like, how did you feel? What happened? What was and I want you to put yourself back into that place. I want you to do the same thing with the casual consumer and the super fan. Really sit down and go back and think about the experience, what it was, what happened. In the case of the super fan, what did you like about it? What kept bringing you back? In the case of the problem child, what was the hesitations that you had? Did it create a new expectation? Did it solidify an old expectation? And really kind of think about those things and kind of put yourself in that place. Now, in the workspace that goes with this unit, there is more information on the 3 consumers, more brainstorming and creative thinking, or Blue Sky thinking and creative activities. There's also the worksheets and things that go with this, and the supplemental and the bonus content. Some areas for notes for you to kind of keep notes and work through things. So make sure you download that.